Imagine if you could make more money in 3 months than most countries do in a whole year. Imagine creating technology that billions of people rely on every single day, whether they're searching for answers, watching videos, or navigating the world. Well, that's exactly what Google, or more officially Alphabet, just did. Today, I'm going to take you behind the headlines and show you how this tech giant just shocked Wall Street, rewarded its investors, and proved once again why it's at the very top of the tech world. Hello, everyone. Today I'm excited to share some really big news from one of the world's most famous and influential tech companies, Alphabet, which you probably know better as Google. Alphabet just announced their financial results for the first quarter of 2025, and the news is making headlines all over the world. Not only did they beat expectations, but they also announced a bigger dividend and a huge stock buyback. But what does all this really mean, and why should we care? Let's break it all down together. First, let's talk about what Alphabet is. Alphabet is the parent company of Google, and it owns lots of other businesses too, like YouTube, Google Cloud, and even some companies working on self-driving cars and health technology. But for most people, when we think of Alphabet, we think of Google, the search engine, the ads, Gmail, YouTube, Google Maps, and all the apps we use every day. Every 3 months, big companies like Alphabet have to report how much money they made, how much they spent, and how much profit they earned. This is called an earnings report. Investors, analysts, and regular people all pay attention to these reports because they tell us how well the company is doing. If a company does better than expected, its stock price usually goes up. If it does worse, the stock price can fall. So, what happened in Alphabet's latest earnings report? Well, they did really well. In fact, they did better than almost everyone expected. Let's look at the numbers. Alphabet's total revenue for the first quarter of 2025 was over $90 billion. That's a massive amount of money, more than the entire yearly budget of some small countries. Even more impressive, this was about 12% higher than what they made in the same period last year. To put that in perspective, imagine if you got a 12% raise at your job every year. That's a huge increase, especially for a company that's already so big. But revenue is just the money coming in. What about profit? Alphabet's net income, which is basically the money they have left after paying all their expenses, was $34.5 billion for the quarter. That's almost 50% higher than last year. Their earnings per share, how much profit each share of stock represents, was $2.81. Analysts were expecting just $2.01, so Alphabet beat those expectations by a wide margin. Why did Alphabet do so well? There are a few reasons. First, their main business, advertising, keeps growing. Every time you see an ad on Google Search or YouTube, Alphabet makes money. In the first quarter, advertising brought in about $67 billion. That's more than any other company in the world makes from digital ads. Second, Google Cloud, which is their business that rents out computing power and storage to other companies, is growing super fast. In the first quarter, Google Cloud made about $12.3 billion, up 28% from last year. That's a huge jump, and it shows that more and more companies are trusting Google to run their websites, apps, and data. But it's not just about making money. Alphabet is also investing a lot in new technologies, especially artificial intelligence or AI. You might have heard about Google's AI projects like Gemini, which is their latest AI model. They're using AI to improve search results, make YouTube recommendations smarter, and even help doctors diagnose diseases. CEO Sundar Pichai said that their new AI-powered search features called AI Overviews are now being used by 1.5 billion people every month. That's almost 1 out of every 5 people on the planet. So, Alphabet is making more money, growing fast, and leading in technology. But what about the other big news? Dividends and buybacks. Let's talk about those. First, what is a dividend? A dividend is when a company pays some of its profits directly to shareholders. If you own a share of Alphabet stock, you get a small cash payment every few months. It's a way for companies to reward people who invest in them. Until recently, Alphabet didn't pay dividends at all. But now, they've decided to start, and not just that, they're increasing it. For this quarter, they're paying a dividend of 21 cents per share, which is a 5% increase from before. That might not sound like a lot, but when you have billions of shares, it adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars going back to investors. Next, let's talk about stock buybacks. This is when a company uses its own money to buy back its shares from the stock market. Why do companies do this? When there are fewer shares available, Each remaining share becomes more valuable. It's another way to reward shareholders. Alphabet's board just approved a new buyback program worth $70 billion. That's one of the biggest buybacks in history. It shows that Alphabet's leaders believe their company is strong and that their stock is a good investment. So why are these moves important? For one, they show that Alphabet is confident about its future. The company is making so much money that it can afford to pay dividends and buy back shares while still investing in new technologies. It also means that Alphabet is listening to its investors who have been asking for more ways to share in the company's success. The stock market reacted very positively to this news. After the earnings report came out, Alphabet's stock price jumped by more than 5% in after-hours trading. That's a big move for a company of this size. Investors were clearly impressed by the strong results and the shareholder-friendly decisions. But it's not all smooth sailing. Alphabet, like all big tech companies, faces some challenges. There are concerns about new regulations, especially in Europe and the United States. Governments are looking closely at how companies like Google collect data and compete with others. There's also the risk of new tariffs, which could make it more expensive for Alphabet to do business in some countries. And of course, there's always competition. Other tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta are all investing heavily in AI and cloud computing. Still, Alphabet's results show that it's handling these challenges well. By focusing on its strengths, like search, ads, cloud, and AI, it's staying ahead of the competition. The company is also being smart about how it spends its money, balancing investments in the future with returns to shareholders today. Let's take a moment to sum up the key numbers, just so we don't lose sight of how big this is. Alphabet made over was $34.5 billion. Advertising brought in about $67 billion. They're paying a dividend per share and buying back $70 billion worth of stock. Those are huge numbers, and they show just how important Alphabet is to the global economy. But beyond the numbers, what does this mean for us? Well, it shows that technology is more important than ever. Companies like Alphabet are shaping the way we live, work, and communicate. Their investments in AI, cloud computing, and other technologies will affect everything from how we search for information to how businesses run their operations. And when these companies do well, it can have ripple effects throughout the entire economy. It also shows that being adaptable and innovative pays off. Alphabet started as a search engine, but now it's a leader in so many different areas: ads, cloud, AI, and more. By always looking for new opportunities and investing in the future, they've managed to stay on top, even as the world changes around them. So what can we learn from Alphabet's success? First, the importance of innovation. The world is changing fast, and companies that want to succeed have to keep up. Second, the value of investing in the future. Alphabet isn't just resting on its past achievements, they're always looking for what's next. And third, the power of confidence. By paying dividends and buying back stock, Alphabet is showing that it believes in itself and wants its investors to share in its success. In conclusion, Alphabet's first quarter of 2025 was a huge success. They beat expectations, grew their business, and rewarded their shareholders. They're leading the way in technology and showing the world what's possible when you combine innovation, smart business decisions, and a commitment to the future. So, as we've seen, Alphabet's latest results aren't just about big numbers or fancy technology. They're about how innovation, smart decisions, and bold moves can change the world. Whether you dream of working in tech, starting your own business, or just want to understand how the world's biggest companies operate, there's a lesson here for all of us. Never stop learning, never stop adapting, and always look for ways to make a positive impact. Now, I challenge you. Think about the technology you use every day. How could you use it to solve a problem, help someone, or create something new? The next big idea could come from anyone, anywhere, even from someone right here in this room. Let's stay curious, keep asking questions, and who knows, maybe one day we'll be the ones making headlines.